Good evening. So we had a great vote, obviously, on HB1. I'd say near unanimous, just 5 no votes in the chamber. Strong bipartisan support. We also obviously passed out the Senate President's priority in Live Healthy, so it was a really good day for the people of Florida on both fronts. And I'll take your questions.
You know, we're already hearing some people say, hey, look, this is legislative autonomy. Do you feel like you did that with HB1, given that the governor still has some reservations with it?
Well, we've worked with everyone, all stakeholders from really the first moment, and so we've made a number of changes. Remember, most of our priorities passed in week 3 and 4 last year, and so we've taken a little bit more time to get to where we are. But we think we have a really good product. We're really excited about it, both being effective and constitutional. And so, yeah, we're really happy with where we are.
Hours ago, though, the governor said that the bill wasn't there yet. Do you think he might veto this bill?
I don't know. I don't know what the governor is thinking.
There's a bill moving through that it would change ID requirements. New applicants for state IDs would have to put their sex on there versus gender, which is more of an ambiguous term. I think it's ready for the floor in the House, but it hasn't gone anywhere in the Senate. I don't know if you have an idea. I know it can go into rules in the Senate. I just don't know if you're confident that that's going to make it across.
That bill also says that if you're an insurer that provides support for transitioning to another gender, that you also have to allow those that want to transition back and pay for that as well. And so I think that's a bill that I'm supportive of, and we may put it on the House floor. I don't know where it is in the Senate, but we'll support it.
Do you are you confident that it'll get to the governor, or do you have any? Is it? I mean,
I don't know. I don't know what's happening with that bill in the Senate. There are bills certainly that we don't put up on the floor because the bills are dead in the Senate, oftentimes just because of the constrained time frame that we have. But there's also bills. One of them was the bill we passed last year, the 21 and under bill that we passed off the House floor and may do so again this year, that we just believe as a philosophical statement is where we think we need to be for the law abiding, as opposed to the bills we are passing this year that take a real tough stance on juveniles who are stealing guns and using guns in criminal activity, and kind of the different approach we've taken towards bad actors with guns. So.
Can I ask you about the elections bill?
Yeah.
What's going to happen with that, and also as importantly, if you could explain the genesis and whether or not some of the ideas came from other people in the process, including the government?
No, I mean, I heard over the summer there was that idea that we should take another look at it once it got, and we believe in having a full, discussion of issues like we did with Spencer Roach and Hillary Cassell's bill on property insurance, even bills that we're not intending to take up. But it was worth having the conversation. But I think I heard Carly Simon singing in the background, "You must think this bill is about you," because we certainly had a lot of feedback from people that thought it was. But look, we had a conversation. It was a short conversation, and that's it. So
it's dead from the session.
I think so. Yeah, I think people have to be on board with it and think it's a good idea. And I can argue both sides of that bill. You can argue the cost and that thing in opposition, but you can also argue why you ought to have at least 50% support in your party to be the nominee. So it just depends on how you come down on that bill. But we're in a tight time frame now. We don't have a lot of bandwidth and time to do things that are not going to create consensus among both Republicans and Democrats that can sail through. And that was one that, again, a lot of people thought was about them. So,
is the House considering making any changes to the Chinese land restriction bill from last year? The Senate was making some, and the governor criticized that today.
Criticized changes to the bill?
Changes to the law passed last year.
Yeah, I mean, well, what I've been told, and again, this is from stakeholders, that deals have gone south. Deals where you're going to develop land and sell it to people that are not Chinese Communist Party members. I think anytime, and again with that constrained time frame we have, when you put forward a bill in short order, we're doing that with HB1 from last year, universal choice. The president's doing that with Live Local, is to come back and say, okay, we need to make some adjustments to make sure that hits the mark and gets the very best policy in place if we're going to keep that in place. And so I think the concept's very good to prevent the Communist Party, the Chinese Communist Party, from buying land near military bases or critical infrastructure. I think the concept is very, very good, which I support wholeheartedly. But if it created unintended consequences, are we saying we're not going to look at that? I mean, I think that's what is really at issue there.
So if the governor's criticizing, the House might take it up anyway?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard from the governor's office at all on that. You're telling me something I didn't hear at his press conference, but I don't know, and I don't know what his concerns are. I might share those concerns. I just don't know.
Thank you.
So.
What's going on with school deregulation? The Senate passed that, it seems like months ago, but it kind of seems like it's just been hanging out here in the House a little bit. Is that moving pretty soon, or are there some hangups with that? What's going on with it?
No, I think that's actually a great example of a fantastic partnership between the House and Senate where we've worked on maybe 100 items. I mean, there was a lot of stuff in that was suggested in that bill, and we've been working for weeks and weeks. And I think we're in a good spot on a product that both chambers can pass and do really a lot of good for our public schools, and where we don't, trip over a line that goes into a problem with accountability. And so there were a few items that, we had issues with early on, made those really clear, but worked in the places where we weren't sure to get to agreement with the Senate. So I think it's actually just the opposite. It's a product of and an evidence of really a great relationship to work through bills, find a landing spot where we can both get comfortable, and I think you'll see that bill, get passed before we're done.
Can I ask you about a bill that was up and moved through one of the House committees today on vaping and nicotine product regulation? One of the critics got up and said it was basically amounted to a flavor ban, which the governor had vetoed a couple years back. What's your take on the bill itself, and then the prospect, just the issue itself, and the prospect of whether or not this particular bill would get passed, would get into law?
Yeah, I mean, the concern, obviously, and I've spoken to some folks in the law enforcement areas in the Attorney General's office, is that we might have adulterated product again coming from China perhaps, that is not to the standards we would expect for people to take it into their bodies, and that we all assume, I certainly would assume, that when I go into a store and buy something like that the FDA's given its blessing, or there's some level of safety, and so that's the purpose of the bill on the proponent side. I know there have been some concerns raised, and there's been, I think, some changes to the bill that get it in a better posture. We certainly want to allow people to challenge the FDA or prompt them to either say yes or no. That hasn't been happening, it sounds like, at the rate that we would expect. And so that, I think, is frustrating, certainly for the people on the opposite side of the bill, to say, look, we're trying to get approval, but the FDA won't move. And so, we're trying to balance out the pros and cons on both sides of that to get to a landing spot. But I can't tell you just yet whether that bill goes or not, but the members I know, just as late as today, were chatting about it, and that were on opposite sides of the bill. They were on opposite sides of the bill to try to get in a good spot. And it sounds like those conversations, from what I heard, were productive, and they'll continue talking.
Do you have any reaction to some of the comments the governor made to supporters yesterday, related to, he was critical of conservative media, said they weren't holding Trump accountable. He suggested that Trump was maybe engaging in identity politics in terms of his VP search, but then he also said
In terms of what? His VP search?
His VP search, and
Okay.
and then he also made some comments relative to, he hasn't made up his mind about running in the future, but obviously didn't close the door either.
I was there. I wasn't there for the whole part. I heard none of that, but that doesn't mean that's not. I wasn't there
So
for.
you were on the call yesterday?
Oh, on a call?
There was a video
No,
call yesterday? Was
no, I
it was
wasn't on the
delegates.
call.
I didn't think you would have been.
Oh, no, I was not. So I don't know anything about that. I'm sorry, I don't.
But, I mean, what do you think about all the things he's been doing of lately? And do you think he's positioning himself to stay in the conversation and run for president again?
I don't know. You have to ask the governor. It's a governor question for the governor's gaggle.
Can I ask you more generally then about this session in relationship with the governor, and how he's approached this session versus last session when he was gearing up to run? It seems like there was policy after policy after policy that he was really sort of more involved, I guess, in the lead up to this session than when he was out on campaign. And then now that he's off the campaign trail, you can tell me if I'm wrong, that he's become more involved in the policy as it's, we're heading toward the finish line here. So if you could just speak about that, if you think that's accurate or not, and just your relationship with the governor and this session versus last session.
Well, last session, we got so much done that I think we kind of cleared the decks. And so this session, was looking at what other good policy, and then we got a lot of good policy in the end. We have a lot of member bills that are moving through, obviously we passed HB1 today, Live Healthy, that I think will really make the lives of Floridians, and in the case of HB1, our kids, a lot better. And so, we're doing what we've been doing from last year into this year, but there's less of the big ticket items that we had last year left because we got them all done last year. And I'm proud of the partnership we had with the governor, the Senate, and on all of that last year. And so, again, we're getting a number of good bills done this year as well, but all those top priorities kind of got cleared out last year, which is a good thing. And so we'll continue to work with the governor's office and with the Senate on bills that remain out there, and on the budget that we're talking about now, to try to get in a landing place that is responsible. And on the budget, again, my priority is to make sure we're in a good spot from a long range outlook, and making sure we're not in a fiscal imbalance. I think it's responsible if you campaign as a conservative to govern like a conservative on the budget. And I think we're getting there as we talk back and forth between the parties. And I think I'm hopeful that we'll come out with a budget that everybody can be pretty excited about, and that will do good for the people of Florida.
When do you expect the allocation?
I don't know yet, but we're working really well together. There's been no hiccups, to date, and we're just kind of going back and forth trying to get to a landing spot that everybody can be comfortable with. But again, I got a great relationship with the Senate President, and I expect that to continue in the budget discussions.
She expected conference to start Monday. Is that your expectation?
She's got us on the clock, so we're going to try to get there. I know we're going to continue talking through tonight and into tomorrow, and so we'll try to get there. Obviously, we have to get there to have that conversation by Monday, but we're going to keep working, and I'm confident we'll get there. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Thank you, guys.